We begin in New York tonight, where in the last hours, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has addressed the UN General Assembly. He accused Russia of what he called weaponizing everything, from food and energy to abducted children in its war against Ukraine. Zelenskyy said he had been preparing a global summit and would invite all countries that have zero tolerance towards aggression. In his emotional speech, Zelenskyy said ending the war in Ukraine is a chance to end wars worldwide.
The main thing is that it is not only about Ukraine. More than 140 states and international organizations have supported the Ukrainian peace formula fully or in part. The Ukrainian peace formula is becoming global. Its points offer solutions and steps that will stop all forms of weaponization that Russia used against Ukraine and other countries and may be used by other aggressors. Look, for the first time in modern history, we have a real chance to end the aggression on the terms of the nation which was attacked. And this is a real chance for every nation to ensure that aggression against your state, if it happens, God forbid, will end, not because your land will be divided and you will be forced to submit to military or political pressure, but because your territory and sovereignty will be fully restored.
Our chief political editor, Michaela Kufner, is at the UN in New York, and I asked her for her main takeaways from Zelensky's speech.
Well, first of all, he was here in person, so that shows both that he is taking the UN very seriously, that he's serious about wanting to win the hearts and minds, particularly of the global south, who've been a lot more reserved, at the very least, in backing Ukraine all out and condemning Russia's actions over those 1.5 years of conflict. This really was his pitch to the world, even more forceful, I dare say, than last year, because last year everybody was still, including him, under the fresh impression of the aggression. Here we see him mapping out a case to the world why the Ukraine conflict, that standoff with Russia, isn't just some conflict somewhere in Europe, but is something the whole world needs to get together against, not least because it concerns everybody's security concerns and food security around the world. So clearly Volodymyr Zelenskyy putting a lot of effort into making this a very local, a very regional case why everybody should care and not just Ukraine and its allies.
You say he wants to win hearts and minds, but to those who haven't already sided with Ukraine, will this make a difference?
Well, we hear time and time again behind the scenes when you talk to Ukraine's allies that just because a country doesn't come out against Russia, it doesn't necessarily mean that it backs what Russia is doing. And in fact, there's very few countries that do. Even a country like China, which is against the violation of borders but wouldn't really come out against Russia all out. There are concerns over international stability that are shared even by partners of Russia, and countries that are dependent on Russia in one way or another, particularly over food security when it comes to fertilizer. Also, Ukraine's exports of grain and fertilizer getting through. They are a lot more cautious. They don't want to be caught in between this standoff, essentially between Russia and the West. But that's also, this seems to be a moment where African nations have come together. They launched their own peace talks. We saw South African President Ramaphosa speak also before the UN General Assembly and saying that at least the return of children, that was something where some progress had been made. That is something that the Africans themselves addressed when they were in Moscow. So we're seeing many diplomacy levels come together, but also speaking with many voices, which makes it a challenge to get everybody behind Ukraine in one way or another.
Yeah. Now, all of that said, the war is not at the top of everybody's agenda. How are other countries competing for attention with Ukraine?
Yes, it's really interesting because I've put this to many leaders here, also island nations who are suffering from the acute climate change. And they are saying, look, they totally get it, but they also feel that they are given the space to map out what really concerns them. There's more funding pledges, but as UN Secretary General Guterres has said, it simply isn't enough. Action is needed fast. I also spoke to the Prime Minister of Fiji actually here yesterday along the sidelines, and he said, yes, the recognition is there, but speed is of the essence. And that's where Ukraine could be perceived to steal the limelight to a certain degree, particularly when you look at the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030 that have only been met by around about 15%. Acceleration is needed. The intent is there. More money is there, but many feel it simply isn't enough yet. So other things, other crises, other conflicts, let's look at Mali, Sudan, South Sudan, are also on the agenda, but Ukraine is really stealing the limelight to a certain degree.
That was Chief Political Editor Michaela Kufna. Thank you. Always great speaking to you.